Welcome to the County Manager's Report. I'm Lloyd Higuera, and with me is County Manager Larry Werner. Welcome, Larry.
Thank you, Lloyd.
And good to have you here. We've got a lot to talk about. We've got two meetings to talk about, both April meetings, the 6th and the 20th. And let's start with the April 6th meeting of the Douglas County Board of Commissioners. On that agenda, commissioners adopted a resolution declaring a state of emergency due to potential severe weather events and also potential for flooding during those events in the spring and summer months during the runoff periods. So is this kind of a preemptive thing?
Exactly, Lloyd. That's a word was just coming out. The concern is that if the snow melt comes off very fast, then we could have some of the same flooding issues we had in January and February. So by doing an emergency declaration, then whatever work we do to anticipate that, and if it does occur, then it is reimbursable potentially through FEMA and the state. So the idea is to get a little proactive and maybe get some things taken care of.
Sure. How has the flooding situation been during the runoff period so far?
So far, no problems. The rivers run high, but it seems to be coming off, fills up the river, and then things kind of slow down. And so if we could kind of have that same pattern for the rest of the summer, it would be great.
Well, one thing about that spring and summer type flooding is that it sticks around a lot longer than the winter type flooding. The water stays.
Yes.
And that can really be damaging.
And that's part of the problem, because right now the areas that would absorb water are already full.
Exactly.
Based on what we had earlier this winter. And so basically whatever hits is going to run off.
Yeah. Okay. So, so far so good. And knock on wood, hope that it just comes down nice and easy.
Right. We're going to be meeting on it later this week as a group, just kind of see where things are at, and that ought to be a definite reason for it'll start flooding.
Sure, so. Exactly. Also at the April 6th meeting, commissioners introduced an ordinance, and this one was prohibiting marijuana establishments in Douglas County. Now, is this a complete prohibition?
It is. It's basically based on what we've heard through the community, heard through the different towns, GIDs, is that there's just not an interest to have any kind of a marijuana establishment within the county. You know, Carson City will have some, and if there's a need, then it's not that far to travel to Carson, and so basically the ordinance is being introduced to prohibit any kind of.
Okay. So there has to be an ordinance behind this action?
Correct. Right, yeah.
Seems to me the Planning Commission made the same decision, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. Also, commissioners agreed to enter into an agreement with the Carson Water Sub-Conservancy District, who will provide $95,000 to complete the area drainage plan for the Johnson Lane area.
Yes. Interesting enough, the Carson Valley, or the Carson Water Sub-Conservancy District has the ability to obtain funding that we can't. And I think mainly because it's more of a multi-jurisdictional agency. And with our $95,000 match, we get an additional $285,000 from FEMA. So with the combination of those two, we can then do an area-wide drainage master plan in the Johnson Lane area.
Okay. Now the Johnson Lane area, of course, is prone to that alluvial fan type flooding. And so is that what's going to be studied?
Right, and that's why it's fairly expensive as well, because of the alluvial fan. Then you have to look at all the little tributaries. It takes a lot more detail to deal with that type of flooding than it does with the riverine flooding, where things are pretty confined to a riverbank or a channel, and you can kind of see where things go. But those thermal storms that we have in the summertime, it's really hard to predict when and where, so you kind of have to look at the whole area. Sure. And treat it all as one.
What kind of solutions are there to that type of flooding?
There's a combination. A lot of it has to do with doing some maybe land restoration up above in the mountainous areas, so that the water doesn't run off quite so fast. That can either be replanting, or it can be eliminating, putting some ruts and small drainage channels that come out, maybe do some minor regrading with the land up there. In some cases it might be small berms, but basically try to do a bunch of little stuff that'll control it to keep it from getting to a big storm. And then when we get down in the valley, then what we have to do is determine, okay, if the water starts reaching the residential areas, then how does it get through those areas to the river or to where it needs to go to? So then trying to identify channels that might need to be reconstructed. There's things there that also they're not biofilters, but they're basically planting areas that allow the landscape to take up some of the water. So it's a combination of kind of hard and soft solutions.
I see. Boy, Sounds expensive.
Yeah, considering this study is about 370,000, when we start getting to capital costs, it'll be in the millions, and then then the toughest part will be how do we pay for that?
Yeah.
At least we got to know what we're doing before we can even get started.
Okay, very good. So it's a work in progress.
Exactly.
Okay, commissioners also at that meeting adopted a resolution raising the trash rates for residential and commercial customers of Douglas Disposal.
Right. The county has a franchise agreement with Douglas Disposal that allows the company to go through and look at a cost of living or a CPI kind of increase. The process works where they have to hire a third-party auditor to take a look at what the true costs are, the CPI index, those sorts of things, and how that relates back to the trash collection. And then they provide that report to the county finance department then reviews that. And if it appears to be appropriate and justified, then we bring it forward, as we have done here, to do so.
Okay. Let's move on to the April 20th meeting of the Board of Commissioners. Another busy meeting. Commissioners at that meeting discussed and directed staff concerning the fiscal year 2017-2018 budget and Douglas County Redevelopment Agency funds. And this will all come back, of course, to the commissioners in May. But what was discussed there?
Boy, it's hard to decide where to start. Essentially, the board this year asked to get into a little more detail on the budget. So we've gone through a lot of the detail and a lot of discussions, a lot of what to do with some of the unanticipated revenues, where we see some increases in revenues, either due to, for example, the occupancy tax, the transit occupancy tax. We're seeing more people at Lake Tahoe, so therefore we get a bigger piece of the pie for the taxes they pay. So it's trying to determine what the priorities are and what do they want to fund. Several of the departments have looked for new positions. We've also had some major facility maintenance issues like heating and ventilation systems, things that need to be repaired. So we kind of walked through all of that and asked the board to take a look at what their priorities are. So the meeting that we held on the 20th was kind of to give an overview of what was in the budget, what was a continuation from previous years, what kind of additional revenues we may have available, and then how do they want to spend those, where do they want to put it. So it was kind of a workshop within a budget session. And the capital plan is one we have to adopt. Well, I'm sorry, we're talking about redevelopment. And the redevelopment agency is basically to take a look at the monies coming in from the redevelopment agencies areas, and that if there are any projects that want to be brought forward on that one, of which we currently do not have any that are being brought forward other than the North Valley Wastewater Treatment Plant, but they also have to approve the budget though. So.
I see. Well, this is probably one of the most discussed budgets we've had in quite a while in Douglas County. We had 4 evening meetings on the budget, and now this particular meeting was a workshop kind of a thing, and then there's 2 more major budget hearings coming up.
Right, on the May 4th at the regular board meeting, we'll be kind of finalizing what we started here on April 20th. And we've just sent out in the board agenda packet kind of what the commissioners' wishes were on how the money should be expended. That'll be discussed at May 4th, and a lot of that will transfer from that discussion into the capital plan or into the operating budget, depending on whether it's a personnel issue or it's a capital improvement issue. And then once that's done, the tentative budget then goes to the board on May 15th for its final adoption as the tentative budget, and then it's filed with the state of Nevada.
I see. But it isn't really over then. I mean,
No, we're getting close.
Getting close, though. Well, where there's a budget, there's always a capital improvement plan, too. And commissioners also discussed the fiscal years 2018 to 2022 capital improvement program for Douglas County. And that one, of course, will be coming back to commissioners, too, in May.
Correct. And again, what this is, it's a plan. It's a 5-year plan. What we try to do is break out in what we call the budgeted portion of the 5-year plan and then the plan section of the capital improvement program. So those items that need to be funded this coming year will be in the budgeted portion, and then things that are yet to be done but have no funding for them will go into the plan portion. And that's done annually, and again, that's filed with the state of Nevada at the end of July.
Okay. All right. Anything interesting on that capital improvement plan?
No, most of it's pretty routine. Again, a lot of facility improvements. I was trying to think of some of the other items. There's small, things like computers, things like vehicles. One of the major purchases there, or potential purchases, was a transfer, as was identified in the Regional Transportation Commission plan, for purchasing equipment for road maintenance. I think that was about a $1.2 million expenditure that was moved over to now purchase actual road equipment so we can do what we need to do as far as the Regional Transportation Commission is concerned.
Okay.
So that's probably the biggest sole item with that. And the utilities, the North Valley plant, all the different water systems, those are all in there as well.
Okay. Well, also, commissioners approved, and they continued and updated Douglas County fiscal years 2018 to 2022 strategic plan.
Right, and that one, I guess I shouldn't chuckle, but we're having as much time getting strategic plans, saying what's important to us, as we are getting the budget out. This is how we're going to spend the money. So, and I think we're close. It was a matter of, I don't want to say it's semantics, because the words are important in that. That there was a concern that the way that we had presented it, that we were actually setting up priorities amongst the 6 strategic goals.
Right.
And the board wants to consider those to be at an equal level. I think with financial stability being actually at the top, but even though we're not setting priorities, but to kind of focus on financial stability, which then gets us into the ability to do infrastructure, employee sustainability, economic vitality, those sorts of things. But I think we're close. I think one more meeting and we might have it adopted.
Yeah, a lot has gone into the strategic plan too, a lot of meetings and discussion.
Yes, we've had a lot of meetings, yes.
Yes, okay. Also, at the meeting on the 20th, commissioners adopted on a second reading an ordinance raising the transit lodging license tax by 1% in the Lake Tahoe Township. This was also discussed at the meeting on the 6th, but this was the second reading.
Correct. And this one was actually brought to us by the transient lodging folks at Lake Tahoe in the Lake Tahoe Township, to basically get the funding going for the event center and other economic development activities within the planned area 2 of the redevelopment plan. And there's been a lot of discussion about trying to do this event center. We could have a year-round events take place. And the problem is that it takes time for a redevelopment area to build its funding source. It goes through several tax years to get there. And the need to start doing some pre-planning, some financial planning, needs to start right away. So the idea was to use the transient lodging license tax to start that process, fund those portions, and then as the actual funding became necessary for the event center, we feel that there's a shortfall will be there between the redevelopment area funding and the ability to construct, and this would help fill that gap. Once it's constructed, then this money could also be used for operation and maintenance of that event center.
I see.
So it's all tied to doing a major event center at Lake Tahoe.
Okay. And the 1%, I mean, what would that net the Tahoe Township for that project a year?
I think we're looking around $650,000.
Oh, okay. So pretty substantial.
Yes.
Yeah. And the event center, of course, has a much higher price tag on it than that.
Yes, and we're trying to get our arms around that too at this stage, and that's the problem. It's going to be a fairly significant cost, and we don't know that the funding from the redevelopment increment is going to be enough to fund that, so that's the concern.
Okay. Well, commissioners at that meeting also adopted a resolution to post no parking with tow-away zone signs from the Cave Rock Trailhead parking lot that overflows onto Cave Rock Drive. They have a problem there?
Yes, in going up Cave Rock Drive, there's a fairly significant hairpin turn right about where the trailhead is to go look at Cave Rock. And I think there was parking set up for about 6 or so spaces on the drive itself, and about 3 off-road. And the problem is they're in the evening to watch the sunset. People begin to congregate there pretty significantly, and it blocks the roadway and can't get emergency vehicles up. By doing it as a tow-away zone, what can happen is we can enter into a contract with a tow company that, upon notice to the tow company, they can come out and actually tow the car if it's actually there. historically, we've been relying on the sheriff's office to come up and issue parking tickets, and that's just not timely. Things, you can get a ticket but still have the car there, and
Sure.
it becomes a problem. So this is more of a safety issue than anything else at this point.
Okay. And it actually blocks traffic.
It does.
Yeah,
It
wow.
does.
Commissioners approved reimbursement to the Kingsbury General Improvement District at that meeting in the amount of $76,881.20 to reconstruct a collapsed storm drain on Tramway Drive.
Right. This occurred, I believe, last fall, where there's a storm drain under Tramway Drive, and it collapsed and is beginning to take the roadway out with it. It was really unclear as to who that belonged to, but the county took the position that since the county accepted the improvements, accepted the dedication, even though it was within the KingsburyGID, that we would share the cost with KingsburyGID to get it restored. It started out to be about a $40,000 project, but it turns out that there wasn't right-of-way for the exiting of the conduit to go on to property to drain. So we had to go and then work through KingsburyGID to acquire the easements, and then the cost rose significantly. So roughly a $150,000 project, of which I believe there's a homeowners association up there that may or may not participate. If they do, then our costs would come down a proportionate share. But
Oh, I see.
trying to get this done to protect the road as much as anything else.
Sure. And also, commissioners heard several presentations at that meeting. One was on the 2017 Amgen Tour of California Women's Bicycle Race. That'll come up on May 11 and 12 at Lake Tahoe.
Yeah, and I think the most significant thing there is for people to let them know about traffic issues on May 11th and 12th. That will significantly be a problem. If you're trying to travel through, if you're going there to enjoy the race, it's a wonderful thing. But if you're trying to get from point A to point B, it might be a little more difficult. But
Yeah.
it's exciting. It's quite an event.
Yeah, they've been back 2 or 3 times now, haven't they?
Right.
At least, yeah.
I think this will be the second time that I'm
Second.
aware of.
Okay.
But I don't know if they had done that before either. I don't remember.
Well, the very first time was the men's race, and it got canceled because of snow.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, that was a while. Yeah.
And last year, I think we had to cancel the meeting at the lake because we
Actually,
couldn't-
no, the meeting was backed up to 2:30 or something like that.
Oh, that's what it was.
Yeah,
That's right. I stand
because
corrected.
of the race, but it won't interfere this year.
No,
on
won't interfere.
on those dates. Also at that meeting, there was a ceremonial presentation for the best tasting water in Nevada. That was awarded to the Douglas County Utilities Division. And so the winner is, who has the best tasting water in Nevada?
Well, it turns out that the Cave Rock Water System
right.
won first place, which was pretty exciting. And actually, we also got second place award with the Montana Water System.
Okay.
So we kind of did a twofer this year.
No, we do have great water and great tasting water here.
Exactly.
You sure notice it when you go to other communities. You mean you
Yes.
pay visits around, and it's like, ooh, they drink this? Also, one more item from that meeting. Commissioners heard a presentation, overview, and update on the US 50 South Shore Community Revitalization Project.
Right, and the presentation was focused on the Tahoe Transportation District's planned Loop Road project. As it turns out, that it's also going to be kind of a revitalization project and a workforce housing project in looking at how and the alignment, how and where the roadway is going to go. There was going to be about 40-some residential units replaced or displaced, both single-family and multifamily. And in looking at replacing those, the Tahoe Transportation District determined that they actually could make some improvements up there as far as workforce housing. So they're looking at not necessarily shifting the priority, but certainly making an equal one of maybe getting upwards of 100 or so housing units that could be reconstructed as part of this project. That kind of gets them going, and it kind of provides a extra benefit. So it was kind of an update on that process and how the priority is shifting from just being a roadway project to also a housing project.
I see. Is this a pretty long-range project? Is it?
It is by maybe 5 to 10 years.
I see.
Usually if things go very smooth, probably get started in 5 years. If things went really, really well, it might be a little bit earlier. But the reality is by the time we go through environmental hoops and all the other kinds of stuff and design and then they want to get the housing done first, and then they can actually come in and do the roadway. So
I see.
So I think exciting up there, particularly trying to find that you can get places for people that work there to live there.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, Larry, I want to thank you for all the information you shared here about the April 6th and the April 20th meetings of the Douglas County Board of Commissioners. That's what we do here on the County Manager's Report. I'm Lloyd Higuera for County Manager Larry Werner, and we'll see you next time here on the County Manager's Report.